Back live with you tonight on In Focus. The Department of Cooperative Governance says that there needs to be a framework or legislation guiding the formation of coalition governments. Governance expert Dr Harlan Cloete joins us now for more on that. Good to have you, Doc, and thank you very much for your time. Do you think a binding legal framework certainly would have helped us in the formation of these coalition governments that are currently at a deadlock? Well, one in particular was at national. Seems that deadlock has been resolved, but Gauteng is one that is becoming problematic at the moment.
No, definitely. Thank you very much, and good evening to you, Thabo, and to your viewers. Definitely a coalition framework is the way to go, because then it sets the parameters. It explains exactly what is to be done. What I like about the proposal is that coalition agreements will need to be made public, so that the public, local public at least, have an input or a say, or know exactly what these parties that are forming a government are committing to. And that holds well for transparency and accountability of local government.
One of the most contentious issues would be that of the threshold, right? Because as we speak, at national level, you've got the PAC, which literally just one seat, holding a ministerial position that seemingly would have been created somewhat for it by dividing the Department of Agriculture and that of land reform. And others would say, well, that's pretty much a very low threshold for a party to hold a ministerial position.
Look, the system, there are arguments for it and there are arguments against it. Our experience certainly in coalition governments at local government sphere is that in many of these cases, the smaller parties, it's like the tail wagging the dog. And so there's an argument that's saying that the 1% threshold allows for almost a cutoff, so that if you do not make it, then you do not get a seat. I think that threshold is applied also nationally. There are certain parties who just simply didn't get enough votes to qualify for seats nationally. I think Azapo being one of them. They do not have seats within the National Assembly. So there are arguments for it and arguments against it. But I think the broad objective is to strengthen local government and to prevent, the smaller parties calling the shots, as it were. If you look at the proposal that if no party gets a majority within council, then you fall back to the collective executive system, which many argue and which research shows is a far better way to ensure broad representation in the executive of the council, proportionally to how the parties have performed within an election.
The question then of processes of impeachment, of removal of office of mayors, exactly the question of motions of no confidence. Certainly this bill could help to eliminate us seeing a lot of that happening.
A lot of the motions of no confidence, some of them have been frivolous. One party falls out with another. And this 2-year threshold of saying that there must be reasonable. So a 2-year threshold so that you do not have a continuation of motions of no confidence. Certainly what local government needs is stability. I always say that democracy starts at the door of the local municipality. Yes, we've got national and provincial government, but all these programs filter down to local government. And so it's so important that local government is stabilized. And what we've witnessed, in the last 3 or 4 years, since 2021 with the local government elections, is that we've seen an increase in local government coalitions from about 26 in 2016 to 2021. We've had more than 80 of them nationally. And there are many cases where it is working. In many cases, it is not working. And a lot has got to do with the instability, specifically at the political instability, where instead of the two biggest losers joining forces, like we've seen now at national, we've had one of the losers who failed to get 50% ganging up with the smaller parties. And in the smaller parties, their point of reference always is, what can we get out of it? Let's start with position instead of principle. And so what this bill tries to achieve is to stabilize local government and to ensure that we do not have continuous motions of no confidence, which I think is a good thing.
Do you see this bill, though, being positioned more to favor the bigger parties than the smaller ones?
I think it tries to create stability. That's what I'm saying. If you look at the mayoral committee system, it says that the winner takes all. And so the winner, the rest of the parties who do not get 50% plus one, therefore they are in the opposition, and the mayor, or it talks about this all-powerful mayor who appoints his executive. With a collective executive system, if nobody gets a majority, it means that parties proportionally, so in other words, 40, 30, 20, 10%, you are represented within the executive. And in any case, I think locally, it's about pragmatic, it's about local economic development, it's about partnerships. It shouldn't be so big an emphasis on ideology, but more in a practical terms. How do we solve local problems? How do we build social cohesion? How do we ensure that there's facilities for everybody? How do we ensure that we share facilities? And how do we have local conversations about how do we take our communities forward? So I think a collective executive system is a far more stable and far more representative system of governance that ensures that there's broad representation within council, and it also places more emphasis on the bureaucracy, on the administrators, the municipal manager and his or her team to get on with the business of making sure that you implement the policies of council.
How could that then be adapted at a provincial and a national level?
Look, the governments of national unity tries to do that. It says, let's see how we can tap into the best minds. What we've seen now is, I think that pattern will continue. We now have 4 of the 9 provinces where we have coalition governance, and I think that over the next decade we have not reached coalition maturity yet. I think it's very, very, very early days. I think the lessons that we've learned from local government will filter through to national, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out. The last government of national unity in 1994 lasted about 2 years before FW de Klerk says, we've had enough. We can't go on like this. Let's rather take up the opposition role and let you, the ANC, get on with it. One hopes that this time around, because it is more broader, that it will be allowed to get off the ground, that we go through our growing pains, because it is not going to be easy. It's going to be a difficult process to keep this marriage, or to make this marriage work. Like one colleague in a municipality told me, it takes hard work to make a coalition work. And so governance is not easy as switching on a light. It's complex, it's egos, it's personalities. It's a host of factors that make sure that points to an effective governance. So I am very optimistic that, we must give it a chance. We must allow the president to get on with it and to perform this almost statesman's role to make sure that this thing stabilizes, because it is all very new to all of us.
Dr. Cloete, appreciate your time. Let's leave it there for tonight. That's Dr. Harlan Cloete there, governance expert, weighing in on the bill and how it certainly could help in the formation of governments of national unity at all spheres, certainly of government.